Melbourne back in lockdown for the sixth time, while Sydney records its worst day of the pandemic. And for more on the resurgence of lockdowns in many parts of Asia, we're joined by Dr. Bharat Pankhania from the UK's University of Exeter. Dr. Pankhania, firstly, Australia and China both reimposing lockdowns and sealing off cities. Does this approach still work when the Delta variant is at play?
It is possible and it will work. Unfortunately, the work is a lot harder. And the reason why the work is a lot harder is that the Delta variant is 3 to 4 times more infectious than the ancestral SARS-CoV-2 virus. So unfortunately, it's more work for our Chinese and Australian friends and colleagues.
Dr. Pankhania, the Delta variant is being seen as more infectious, as you say, but does that explain why infections are still rising despite all these weeks, 6 weeks of lockdown, in fact, in New South Wales?
So with respect to the lockdown measures in New South Wales, it is a combination of, one, a more infectious variant in circulation, and number 2, existing infection control measures, which is lockdown. So what tends to happen is lockdowns, especially in places like Australia, are never as rigid as we would like them to be. And there is always leakage on the sides, whereby what I'm trying to say is the lockdown is not absolute. And once you've got a seeding of a number of cases, they keep on producing more cases. End result, a lot harder despite having lockdowns, despite being in lockdown for 6 weeks.
Let's turn our attention to Japan then and discuss that. Despite having a state of emergency, infection numbers are higher than ever.
Yes, so with respect to Japan, again, the seeding of the new cases to go on to generate more cases occurred well before the Olympics started. And we could see on the horizon a rising tide. And once you've got a rising tide, despite your emergency measures, despite your lockdowns, as in New South Wales in Australia, you will continue to see a rise in number of cases until you eventually have enough people either infected or the virus hasn't got new people to infect. And in Japan, it is a case of the Olympics are there and there is a lot of background activity going on despite the emergency being in place as well.
Dr. Pankhania, where you are in the UK, we're seeing this downward trend of COVID-19 cases, and that's despite all restrictions having been lifted. Is this a direct impact of the widespread vaccination rates that we're seeing in the UK?
I'm a little bit cautious about the downward numbers for the United Kingdom, and my reasons are as follows. We are now what we would call in the school holiday period. So there isn't that extra generation of cases from the school's angle. There isn't the extra testing of samples from the school's testing program as well. And people are more outdoors and on holidays. Putting all those things in place is resulting in officially lower case numbers. Although I do feel if we look at other data, the Office for National Statistics, one, and there is another application called Zoe, and they indicate much higher case numbers than the case numbers from the official PCR testing. So I don't think the United Kingdom case numbers have dropped as dramatically as it looks like.
Dr. Pankhania, one last question before we let you go. What about the possibility of further mutations? The Delta variant is the one that's causing us the concerns at the moment, but is there a real risk that another mutation could enter into the system?
It is entirely possible. And whenever you have uncontrolled infections in countries or continents like Africa, Asia, South America, you have a lot of people infected, a lot of people reproducing the virus. And as a result, new variants can easily emerge in such situations. And therefore, I always advocate that we need to help these countries with vaccines to suppress infections, to suppress case numbers, therefore to suppress the emergence of variants too.
Well, thank you as always for your thoughts this evening, Dr. Bharat Pankhania from the University of Exeter in the UK.